Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com, part of the CBS Sports Podcast Network. I am Mike Casazza here to talk some college basketball today with Chris Anderson. Chris, West Virginia, Baylor, ninth place team in the preseason bowl, first place team in the preseason bowl. Both in the top 25 as recently as 2 weeks ago. One of them is going to be 0-4 come Thursday morning. Can you believe this?
I have a hard time believing it. And what I have an even harder time believing is that, of course, at least one of these teams is going to be 0-4, but they might not be the only team in the league that's 0-4, because Texas Tech 0-3 right now, with a chance to go 0-4 as well this week.
Is it just as simple as shoulder shrug, Big 12, or Texas Tech, West Virginia, Baylor, and even some teams that maybe aren't as hot but are not are they to blame for some of this as well?
I don't think Texas Tech or Baylor are as good as they were last year, which again, that's going to be difficult because both were very good. West Virginia might be better, might be the same. You and I will discuss that, I guess, here in a minute. But yeah, I think for the most part, this is three decent teams, decent to good teams that are playing in by far the toughest conference in the entire country. And they all three missed opportunities. Like, you go and look at each one. I mean, West Virginia could very easily, Kansas was not like Kansas kind of dominated that game almost from the start. I mean, when they make 6 of their first 7 3-point attempts, they jumped out quickly. But West Virginia could easily be 2-1 in conference play. Texas Tech could be 3-0 in conference play. I mean, all three of their games are close, and a couple of them they had the lead in the last minute. And Baylor, they got beat up pretty good by Iowa State in names, but they lost both of their games against TCU and Kansas State, I believe, in the final seconds. In the final minute, Kansas State went to overtime. So again, they're as close to 2-1 as West Virginia is close to 2-1, but and Texas Tech could be 3-0, and they're all 0-3.
I was looking at this the other day. Texas Tech had a 29-game home winning streak. They lost their first 2 at home. That's one reason they're 0-3. West Virginia, it's been 98 weeks since they won a Big 12 road game. 98 weeks. They are 0-2, obviously. However, Big 12 road teams through the first 3 games were 10-5 on the road. That's pretty good work. So I'm not sure how great home court advantage is, much as I don't know how much you're expected to win on the road. But I do think sweep your home game, split in the road, that may be kind of antiquated, or at least not applicable here. Average margin of victory is about 6 points. And I counted 4 games with a double-digit margin, 7 games that were one-shot margins. It's wild. So it's pretty closely cropped. If I told you that Kansas would be at the top, you'd probably say, yeah. If I told you that Iowa State and Kansas State would be up there, you'd probably say, I will take your money, Mike. But that's where we are right now. Anyways, West Virginia is our topic here, and they do fall into some of the stats that we just mentioned there, because average margin, they suffered 6 and 7 point losses to start, 1 in overtime. There's been a few overtime games already. They also have one of the double-digit losses, too. Only 4. They have one of them. First 2 games decided by 13 points. The third decided by 14 points. They are 0-2. That's 2 of the 5 initial Big 12 road losses there. They're 0-3 overall because they lost at home against a team that hadn't played great in Morgantown through the years, but played great in stretches, especially early Saturday. And then now you get a Baylor team that going to be desperate, hasn't been great in Morgantown. I think that the Jalen Bridges thing is going to be an emotional component for the Bears more so than the Mountaineers. I don't know who that favors. I also don't know that you can have a must win in early January, but I don't know how West Virginia goes where it wants to go this year if it doesn't win this game, unless it's capable of doing it the hard way. And I'm not confident that that's the case either.
Yeah, I mean, they're already in a spot where, and listen to what I'm saying out loud, they have to play above 500 ball the rest of the way just to finish 8-10 in Big 12 play. And I think that was before the season. I believe that's where we put like the minimum, just because we knew that, getting in to the NCAA, as far as getting into the NCAA tournament as an at-large, this was going to be such a tough league. And this was going to be an opportunity where you could still get in the NCAA tournament if you finish under 500 in the Big 12. But 7-11, that might be a stretch to get into the tournament, depending on who you win, how you finish, who you beat, all that stuff, and how things go with that Auburn game in the middle there. But you might have to go, like, West Virginia might have to finish 8-7 the rest of the way, or 8-8, I guess, with Auburn, or 9-7. Is it that dire of a situation already?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And by the way, Auburn's in there too.
Yeah.
So that's tough. You're looking at maybe having to win some games in Kansas City, and we know how tough the league is. I think the greater concern is holding things together. And then can they keep this from wobbling? That has not been the program's strength the last couple of years, and the coaching staff has had some significant losing streaks when things have gone sideways. They have not been able to get it back on the road and right of center. That's going to be a challenge here, because the schedule does not relent. It's just not going to do that. There is no bottom of the Big East that can get you right and get you feeling good again. Like, I'm looking at, all right, they get through Kansas, Baylor. That's cool. They get Oklahoma next, and Oklahoma has had a very good win Saturday to snap their 0-2 start with a win at Texas Tech. So teams are capable of getting themselves out of trouble here. Is West Virginia? And right now the answer is no, because we've seen the way they handled their first two road games and the way they handled the adverse moments against Kansas. And the personnel right now just really makes you wonder a little bit too. Bob Huggins says that Emmett Matthews has not been himself since he got injured. That's about 4 weeks ago. Jimmy Bell, not sure what happened there with him, but he left the game, and that's not a guy who complains and quits on you. And we'll see where he is at. Kedrian Johnson concussion. Not sure what you have with Kobe Johnson. Not sure what you have in larger doses with Seth Wilson. And I'm trying to think, am I forgetting someone else? Oh, Eric Stevenson. Let's begin where I ended, Chris. It's been a wild ride for him. Perhaps literally, this is a guy who could not get home for Christmas, ended up getting stuck in Chicago and having to come back to Morgantown to do his Christmas, and just things have not gone right for him since.
I'm glad you went here, because I had like 3 questions, maybe 4, that I wanted to true or false you on. I want you to give me a true or false answer. The first, absent Jose Perez, does West Virginia's season go as Eric Stevenson goes?
Right now, yeah. I think you might want to course correct, though. But yes, true.
Now, explain your course correct, Michael.
He's going to be on the floor a lot, and teams are it seems to me making him do something apart from shoot it, and they're making him guard. And Kansas did not do this, but I wonder if teams will step on his toes and elbow him in the ribs and try to get something out of him and see if he can keep it in. It's just natural for when a player has a reputation. I hate that word, sorry, but like, listen, there's an Eric Stevenson story right now, right? When someone has that, especially when you go on the road, I think teams and people and crowds are going to test you. And I wonder what's going to happen there. And let's see if Saturday was coincidental. Pretty good defenders in that Kansas team chasing him around, and pretty good offensive players making him work on defense. And it had nothing to do with what happened before that. I don't know. Was it a coincidence, or was it an extension of what happened to him in Manhattan, and more specifically in Stillwater? Don't know. We'll see. But I think that you maybe are better off building a lot of stuff around Trey Mitchell, maybe Emmett Matthews, and using your steadier, less emotional, but still very competent offensive players.
I'm with you. I think if your rock, your foundation, the guy you are sending your team around, I don't know if you can have it as volatile as Stevenson is. I think as far as his emotions and his play, like, it's been a little bit up and down, but I think with this last game, as you know, hey, Kansas, pretty long, athletic, great defense. And I don't think Stevenson's bad on offense. I mean, this is like the people who are like, hey, are we going to fire Jordan Leslie? Like Jordan Leslie and the West Virginia football defense is the only reason West Virginia was like a 500-ish team for the first 3 years of Neil Brown's time here. Yes, they were bad in 2022, but I'm taking the first 3 years over the last year and thinking that Jordan Leslie knows what he's doing. Same thing goes for Stevenson here. Prior to that game against Kansas, he was shooting 50% from the field, 43-ish% from three-point range. He was the team's leading scorer. And the reason he was a quote problem was because he wasn't on the floor more. He was so important and so good that he needed to be on the floor more. I mean, it was just that Oklahoma State game where, he obviously got into some trouble because of the technical and getting fouling out of the game and being so caught up in the reffing and everything. But he had 17 points in that game. He made 3 threes in 90 seconds to bring West Virginia back into that game and give them the lead at one point. So I'm buying the dip here, if you will, Mike. I think that he's bottomed out here. 2 emotional, foul-filled games, followed by probably his worst shooting performance since his time at South Carolina. And I think he'll be able to turn it around. But I still think long-term, I'm with you. I'm not sure you want to hitch your entire wagon. I mean, you want him as one of your leaders. You need that emotion, but I don't think you can hitch your entire game, your entire team, your entire offense to one player like that.
That said, though, he is the one person who's most willing to grab the offense by the neck and go, right? Scruff of the neck, I should say, and go. Matthews kind of deferential. Trey Mitchell, he can. I think sometimes he's maybe not as assertive as Stevenson just naturally is. I don't know who else apart from this you really want carrying your offense right now, too. We'll see. Listen, that could have been just the worst combination of factors. Is that a very public, I would say, embarrassing scene for him? Comes back, he apologizes. I would hope that he wasn't happy about having to apologize because that means he's competitive and he hates that he's in that situation. Not that he hates apologizing, but he hates that he did it and then he has to bring light to it so many days later. And then, oh, by the way, you get Kansas. That's tough. Like if that's Oklahoma, I was going to say the worst team in the Big 12, but that could be West Virginia. But if that's a lesser opponent out there than Kansas, perhaps things are different. But a whole lot on the line for him there too. What did you see Saturday? Because I saw somebody who, listen, he did not shrink. He took a lot of shots and he took difficult shots. I don't think that he decided he was going to just take the day off and let this blow over. I'm not sure that he really tried to let the game come to him though either. Maybe he wanted things to change or that he had business changing him that day too.
I'm with you 100%. I think he saw an opportunity to change the narrative about what's happening around him and this team right now by shooting his way out of it. That he could go out there and score 30 points and help West Virginia beat Kansas. And that would be the end of all conversations about, the previous 2 games. And I think he put a lot of that pressure on himself and forced a lot of shots and forced a lot of offense. I mean, you saw a couple times during the game where there was one player in particular. I can't remember if it was a steal or a breakout after an offensive rebound, but he got down the court and it was 1-on-2. And there was a trailer coming on the wing for a 3, but Stevenson had his head down and was going 1-on-2 and just completely lost control, had the ball stripped, and Kansas going the other way. It was plays like that where he was just forcing it. And granted, he is a guy that loves to pull up and shoot threes on fast breaks. He's a guy that likes to take shots early in the shot clock, and he's found success with that. But I think he was pushing himself a little too hard to try to change the narrative around him and this team and what's happened the last week by kind of forcing his offensive game on Saturday.
Kansas switches a ton on their defensive assignments, and man, he got caught up with like Adams sometimes, Wilson sometimes, big guys that are strong and long, and hard shots he was taking. Fadeaways, contested stuff, different parts of the shot clock there too. shots he's made. So I don't want to say bad shots because he's made them before, and I think he practices all those shots. But he was in some different situations too, where fading or twisting or sliding, where just to get away from some of the defensive pressure, the defensive length, that maybe a pass is a better idea. But the funny thing is, if one or two of those shots go in earlier in the game, perhaps it's a whole different story. Got to the free throw line a little bit and seemed like he was going to get it going. He made back-to-back baskets at one point and still ended up with 4 of 19. I think he was 2 for 16 at one point, ends up 4 of 19. And then, curious to me after the game, Huggins says, I don't know. I don't know what he was going through. And then I think he said he was kind of happy to see a guy shoot and try to shoot his way out of it. And then later said that if you were 4 for 19, would you keep shooting? So I think confusing and discouraging and maybe disappointing all around for everybody there too, but certainly somebody they got to get right. And he's going to find some Baylor defenders who are going to make that very difficult for him too. Again, that's a pretty good defensive team they're about to play. Not that Kansas wasn't or isn't, but it just doesn't change here in the Big 12. Speaking of changes, Chris, you covered this in the post game. It's been speculated about for some time since Saturday and since Bob Huggins post game, but rotation changes, maybe starting lineup changes. They could have Kedrian Johnson back. I think it's encouraging. Look at the concussion protocol timeline that he's out shooting jumpers after the game. That means he's allowed to do that physically. So Monday to Saturday, that's a long time in concussion protocol. Picks up the concussion against Oklahoma State on a Monday, doesn't play Saturday. Armchair neuroscience here, Chris. He could be ready to go by Wednesday. That would help. Probably start him. I'm not sure he'd change the starting lineup, but do you shorten the rotations? Do you do something to shake this up apart from saying this isn't going to be like last year because we don't want it to be like last year? That doesn't seem like it's proactive enough.
I was gonna say, I think the question came from Jay Jacobs on his post-game radio show, asked him about shortening the rotation, and Bob Huggins' exact quote was, "No doubt that has got to happen."
Can I stop you there?
Yes.
Was that after Saturday's game or was that after some number of games before this one? It just feels like that's a canned response, right?
Oh, I was like, oh crap, did I screw up? No.
No.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And hey, I'm ready. Let's address this now because this is something else I was going to ask about. The previous game, Pat Sumnick comes in, provides all the spark in the world, is your quote unquote small center who is getting offensive rebounds, bringing energy, changing the game a little bit in that Oklahoma State game. Afterwards, Bob Huggins raves about him, says he wishes other players had his energy and his fight. And then you come to Kansas, where West Virginia goes small, is getting out rebounded, and needs new energy. And Pat Sumnick comes in for 40 seconds in the second half and immediately gets benched right after that.
For James Okonkwo, who I think Huggins called a timeout to pull him out. If not, he was jumping up and down, smacking himself in the head, being like, why did Okonkwo just do that? And they put Okonkwo back in too. So don't know. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like we've heard things, we've seen these performances that make you think there's going to be changes coming. Do they do it? I think we both think it's a good idea. How do they do it though? Like, who do they leave out for a team that has prided itself on incorporating so many people, and who do they play, and how do they shake this up?
I honestly don't know, because I think that was kind of where I was going with this was, hey, yeah, maybe you can make a move like that. I mean, if you need energy and you need rebounding and you're thinking about going small, because I mean, you saw Kansas do it, and West Virginia does not have the athletes that Kansas does. Let's put that just plain as day. But Kansas doesn't have a 6'10" guy out there. They don't have a Jimmy Bell type. They don't have a Wagi type. They are just, hey, we're going to put out a bunch of guys that are between 6'6" and 6'8", and that combined length is going to handle things on the glass. It's going to cause issues on defense, and we're going to go for it. We talked in the preseason about, small lineups with Trey Mitchell as a quote unquote center. Like, what about a Trey Mitchell and Pat Sumnick kind of front court? Could that work? Can you get the rebounding you need out of those guys? I think the answer is yes, and I think that can work in some matchups. I just don't know what you do. I think, first off, you need an answer at point guard. It's been inconsistent, to say the least, at least offensively. because the one guy on your team, there's two guys on this team who will take control, will take take it and say, all right, I'm going to handle it and I'm going to score. And that's Stevenson, who we saw had a rough game last game and has had some foul trouble. The other is Toussaint, who at times gets a little too focused on driving to the basket and going with those pick and rolls. They don't have a point guard that's kind of finding the right mix right now of attacking and distributing, because guys like Trey Mitchell and Emmett Matthews, who you noted earlier, were maybe the two guys you want to see a little more from, but they're not going to create, like, they can create their own after you give them the ball in the correct spot. And right now, West Virginia doesn't have the guy to give them the ball in the correct spot. And that's a problem. So I think you have issues. I feel like West Virginia's good on the wings. You're feeling good 2, 3, 4. And you're trying to figure out what to do at 5, because each one of these pieces, Bell, Wagi, Okonkwo, even if you go with Sumnick as the 5, they're all good at one thing, but have a lot of flaws. And the same thing goes for point guards. They're good at, Keedy Johnson, great on-ball defender, a lot of issues elsewhere. Joe Toussaint, pretty good in some areas, but issues elsewhere. And I think they have to try to figure that out. Like, I think there's just too many flaws at the 1 and the 5 for West Virginia right now. And there's no answers on the roster until next week? ?
Who knows? I mean, they could certainly use a big guard right now who can level out some minutes and maybe give you something off the bench. I mean, the first time he checks in, that's going to be a jolt of energy, and you hope for him and for West Virginia it's on the road. It's at home instead of on the road. We're talking about Jose Perez, of course. Don't know. By the time that you hear this, maybe something has happened. We'll see. But I think what gets my attention, Chris, is I bought the stock in the offseason where they had a plan, they were executing it, and I just like the plan. I don't know what the result is, but I'm buying the plan. It's like a house. You're buying the blueprint. Then you got to see them build the house. Let's see what happens. So I bought the blueprint. I really thought that they were putting a roster together that would kind of let them avoid being boxed into a corner. I put this many ways before, but basically prevent mismatches, create your own. Jimmy Bell didn't seem like a guy who might be useful apart from 2 games against TCU and Eddie Lampkin, something like that. Look how wrong we were there. But he's different than Wagi. You have just different combinations you can do with 2 point guards, 3 guards, 2 guards, 3 forwards, big, small, anything like that. And now we're talking about, well, actually, maybe that's not in your best interest. Maybe you should trim from, this situation where you have more players and scholarships to something a little bit less than that, 8 or 9 people. So if you start your 5, you come off the bench. So you start Keydrian Johnson, Eric Stevenson, Trey Mitchell, Emmett Matthews, Jimmy Bell. And then you pop off the bench in some order with Joe Toussaint. I mean, geez, Chris, where are we going now? I guess Okonkwo, Seth Wilson. And listen, here's the Kobe Johnson thing that makes this difficult. Here's a guy that, not long ago, I was kind of saying, wow, he was a man without an island. Now he's on the island. And now I just don't know. Like, when you set a guy for an entire halves of games, and when his on-off numbers are such as they are, you really wonder about what he's giving you offensively and especially defensively too. So I'm not sure I'd have him in right now until he proves that he can do it. So you're 3 off the bench, maybe, or Okonkwo, who he has the conch today for he's going to play more because he had a couple of rebounds last game. We'll see. But that would be in spite of Wagi, who just has not progressed as much as I think they hoped he had, or at least he'd hinted might be possible early in the season. Hard to blame him for that. He's still so young. But maybe on the court in the Big 12 for an 0-3 team is not the place to learn these things. So Okonkwo, Toussaint, Wilson, and maybe sprinkle in some Kobe Johnson, some Sumnick, some Wagi. We'll see. But 8 with some combination of people for 9. I don't know how you do that, but can they do that and survive and play as hard as they want or with as much pressure as they want on defense? Well, here's the thing, Chris. They don't play traditionally hard. They do not pressure on defense, and they haven't really rebounded in packs or with the ferocity they're used to there. So what are you preserving then if you're not expending that energy that you think you're preserving? Like, I just wonder if they need to be so deep and so long, at least to get the message across. And maybe some of the people who are on the outside looking in are like, wait a minute, Why not me? What am I not doing? I want to be part of this. It's fun again. We're winning. And they practice better, play more, and it kind of becomes in a cycle like that. That might be what they're pinning themselves to right now. If they do pull the trigger on something to shake things up.
Yeah, I think the one thing that immediately came to mind when it was like, how do you shake things up? How do you change the rotation? Other than, adding an all conference point guard that also happens to be 6'5", 6'6", it would be to give Seth Wilson some more time. I'm with you. I think he has shown in spurts an ability to give a spark. He has shown an ability to shoot from deep. I think he's around 40% for the season. He's hit a couple big shots, and he can handle the ball. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say he's a traditional point guard, but he is a guy that, while he is only, I believe, 6'1", maybe 6'2", he is a guy who is not afraid to get in there and mix it up for rebounds or on defense. So I don't think you're losing that much, even though he is a little shorter than maybe you wish he was. But who's he taking time from, I think, is my thing. Like, I'm with you on the Kobe Johnson thing. Maybe he takes some of Kobe Johnson's minutes. I think that maybe that's already starting to happen. Maybe he fills in a little more if Keedy Johnson has to miss another game. But I'm in this situation that as soon as Jose Perez gets cleared, he's playing 30 minutes a game for me. Like, I think that's the situation out there at point guard right now.
I hate to inform you, he's not a point guard though.
I don't care.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I compared him to Jermaine Haley, but it's just, I need ball handlers and I need length and I need guys that are doing stuff. And I just think there's not enough good stuff happening from the point guard position right now. So he's going to be you can call Stevenson my point guard then and move Perez to shooting guard or whatever. But I need ball handlers and I need guys that are going to do things. What's the message board thing about football players? I don't need Jags, just another guy. I need dudes. Yeah. And Perez is a dude.
So I think that he can do some ball handling. Obviously, he gets in the paint, he gets to the foul line, great assist numbers. I think he was point guard by default at Manhattan, and they found a thing that worked with him in the middle there. I don't know that he would play without Keedy Johnson or Toussaint, especially early. I think he'd be with one of them all the time. We'll see. Seth Wilson, I wonder, man, is he like I don't want to slander anybody here, but like Macklemore, where like you go to a concert, he's on stage, like, oh yeah, that's that guy. He plays that song I really like, and he plays like 3 songs. You're like, I don't know what's the rest of this. I don't know his catalog. Is it that good? I don't know. He does a couple of things. I don't know how long you want to stay at a Seth Wilson concert, and maybe that's fine for him right now until he evolves. And maybe he does evolve in the floor because, as you said, he's earned that playing time. But once he plays his hits, what's the rest of the ticket for? Like he's going to have to answer that question there too. But I think he's got himself in the conversation, and Perez would help a lot for sure. And then you just kind of see from where things go too. But I think more than anything else, Chris, they just need a good thing to happen. Like, put a lot of stock into the Portland tournament, didn't beat Purdue, bounced back, did okay. Really wanted to win that game at Xavier for Huggins, couldn't. Okay. Wanted to go home at Christmas with some momentum, didn't. Emmett Matthews gets hurt. 0-2 on the road. Keedy Johnson gets hurt. Lose to Kansas. The Stevenson thing happens. They've just kind of been taking punches for a while, and I feel like if they just get one, well, then that boulder turns over, and I'm not saying it's at the top of the hill and it rolls downhill, but it's easier to move in whatever direction it's going. And why not get a win against Baylor, vindicate a little bit against the Jalen Bridges return to the Coliseum? We'll see what happens, but I just feel like the sooner things change, the better, obviously, but I think that boulder sinks. It becomes harder to move the longer they're in this funk, and that's why you think they have to change it. I would imagine you can't just sit there and go, we'll keep applying the same pressure at the same point, and hopefully it'll turn, when the evidence is that that's not the case.
Boy, you pretty much summed up the message board mentality right now.
Okay.
Let me just need something good to happen. Anything good.
Let's go to the take. Are you ready?
Go.
Gonna go to the message board here. The Ask Mike post.
Okay.
This is a good one. Comes from LGMAKINEER. I don't know what that one is. Leg, mac, and ear. We'll see.
Log making ear. Log
Yeah.
making.
Maybe Leg, leg, making
Oh.
ear. Maybe it's Casey Leg. Don't know. Here's a question, though, Chris. Here's your take. 2 minutes whenever you're ready. I've wondered for a long time about Hug's comments about guys not being in the gym enough. How much should guys be expected to be in the gym outside of practice, especially in a season? I don't follow other programs much, but don't recall hearing other coaches always complaining about guys not doing it on their own. Is it a Hugs thing or something pervasive across college basketball? I don't know if people know this, Chris, but you played the game. I did not play college basketball. I've been around a lot of teams here at West Virginia. I've witnessed a lot of coaches' press conferences from media days, after games, before games, outside of West Virginia. It's not unique, especially when a team is down, but this is a button that Huggins presses a bunch. So as I just explained to you there, this is a concern from leg, make, and ear. But how much time should guys be expected to put in the gym outside of practice in the season? And is this a WVU thing, or is this a college basketball in 2023 thing?
I think it is, to answer that last part first, I think it is a Huggins thing, if you will. Each coach is going to have their thing that they're going to fall back on or lean into when it's time to get on their team, and basically just trying to say, hey, looking for effort, looking for all that stuff. You're going to see other coaches say it other ways. Whether it's, you can tell by looking at the way they act on the bench or whatever like that. And you can tell the way they practice. Huggins' thing is to say they're not getting in here on their own. And putting forth the effort on the free throws or whatever it is. Because in my mind, because it wasn't 3 weeks ago that he was saying, hey, these guys get in the gym a lot. I hear that ball bouncing all the time. I wouldn't think that they all of a sudden just stopped coming to the gym. I don't think this whole team suddenly switched from, putting in all that extra time and then just stopped. I just have a hard time believing that. Maybe they did. I just have a hard time believing it. As far as how much time, obviously NCAA limits how much you can have practice and win. By the way, those limits, they disappear during Christmas break, during winter break in college. That was the worst time ever. That was a long time because you could just have practice as much as you want, whenever you want. At least that's the way it used to be. Maybe they got more limits now, but obviously there are limits on how often you can have organized practices, and coaches are always going to want to have you practice more. They're always going to want you to have rooting more. So I would, in a game like basketball, it's all about repetition and it's all about playing together. And the more you do that, and the more you shoot, and the more you try, and the more you play together, the better you're going to be. So I think if you're a coach in basketball, you want them playing all the time, 100 hours a week if you could.
100 hours a week. We've been looking for a solution the entire time, and you stayed there for the finish.
There you go.
Mountaineers, 100 hours a week, and then I believe 15 and 3 is possible.
100 hours a week, and also sleep 8 hours a day, and also go to school and get a 4.0, and also
lift, eat.
Yes.
Got to get video games or Netflix in there too, just to be normal.
Yeah.
It's a packed schedule. If you think you can do it, try it. See what you can do in 100 hours a week.
I'm trying to think of what it was. Was it 20 hours a week? I think we were limited to, and it was like, that included games, and you couldn't go more than 5 days in a row. Is it kind of like the football rule where you had to have at least 2 days off a week or something like that? So
yeah, let me tell you about how many days in a row I went in college. Different sport altogether. My 100 hours a week, unimpeachable.
Yep.
As is this podcast.
Always is.
Wednesday, West Virginia, Baylor. Someone's going to be 0-4. Someone will think they have their season turned around until they run into the next obstacle in the Big 12. We'll find out who. We'll find out how. Until then, I'm Mike Casazza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you next time.